Welcome back to the Gun Collective podcast. My name is John Patton, and I've got a returning guest this week. I believe this is his third time. We'll get into that in a minute. I first have to give a shout out to our sponsors, Camerado. You can see the video watchers out there. I am wearing Camerado right now. This is a color called Sea Smoke. This is our signature color. It's very oceany, very blue. It's called Sea Smoke. It is so good. And if you go to CAMORADO.com and use the code TGC, you get yourself a little bit of a discount. I think it's like 5% off. And you support our good friend Sean Heron and me by doing that. Then, if you go to xssites.com and use the code TGC, I think you get like 20% off, 20% off. You can see those watching. I've got this echelon here with some sights on there. There were some of my favorites out there. I use anything with that big orange front dot, and tritium is good to go in my book. So check those out, xssites.com. It's important to have a good set of backups. These newfangled red dots can fail. So if you need to rip that off and you need sights on your gun, XS is the one to use. Now, my guest, this young man right here, we have had so many good times on this show, and one of our most popular episodes ever was with Barton Bolfrass of Roborounds. Barton, how are you, brother?
Doing well. Thanks for having me back.
Dude, I'm excited. We chatted real quick the other day about whether or not we should do this, and I think it's a great time to talk about exactly what it is that you do. So for those that don't know, can you give like the 30-second pitch of what Roborounds is as a company?
Yeah. We are an advanced projectile materials laboratory.
Wow.
We come up with
scientific.
I'm former EOD, and I have an interesting background in engineering and geology, and put it all together, and we came up with some electrically disruptive materials. And when you combine those with standard projectiles in pneumatic, center fire, and ranged sectors, you really come up with some very new, innovative technology to combat drones, robots, and electronic targets.
And so I also want to talk about, there's a reason we're talking about this, right? There is this sort of cloud over people's heads of the sudden rush of drones on the East Coast, and some are reporting them in other parts of the country. Can you tell everybody what the hell is going on and why people are freaking out about drones?
Yeah, I mean, I think you only need to look at why people are afraid of bees and wasps and mosquitoes. Anything that can fly and go where you can't and is very fast and maneuverable and very small is incredibly threatening. Look at the Ukrainian war. When we first kind of started coming out of the gate with this, there were a few other organizations. I don't want to say that we got there to the gate first, but when drones were starting to be looked at as a real threat, and I mean off the shelf commercial drones, not military style drones.
Right. Like the small form factor stuff.
Yeah. People thought that was a novelty. And very quickly, you can see that the Ukraine war changed that dramatically. People are very, very aware of the threat of drones now. And I think 3 years ago, if you asked the average individual, what do you think of drones? They might tell you, oh, I've seen drone racing. My kid has a drone. They're real popular on Amazon. I noticed photography is getting really big into it. The movie industry is using drones. But no one would tell you, I'm terrified of them or they're coming for me. Now, fast forward 3 years, when you say the word drone, when you've got daily footage from the war of drones killing person after vehicle, after tank, after armored personnel carrier, when drones are now a threat, the idea of them being a novelty is slowly going away. So when citizens start seeing drones flying above their home, it terrifies them. When citizens start seeing drones flying over the White House and the Pentagon, it terrifies law enforcement. When it starts flying over bases, it starts to terrify the military. What terrifies me is when I hear on the news and when I read in the paper, we don't know what to do. We don't know how to combat this. We want to shoot at them. So either someone knows who and what they are and they're not a threat, they're just not discussing it, or they really and truly don't have a means. From my perspective, we deal with a lot of law enforcement and military, and especially as of late, the inquiries and the negotiations are big.
I can imagine.
But it's all the same. It's, well, can we shoot a drone? Well, they're shooting them down over, Disney shoots them down over their property, and you have lots of different organizations who have taken drones out of the sky. And did they break the law? Did they not break the law? Did the law go after them? Which law did they break? Why are they allowed to do it and no one else is? Why does Disney seem to have the solution to this, but yet the Pentagon doesn't? So it's very worrisome when you start to hear people say, well, is that an alien drone? Well, I think the argument for that lasted a day or two, unless
It didn't last very long. It
yeah.
really didn't.
But if it's aliens, I'm incredibly appreciative that they're following FAA regulations, and whichever the alien is that's running out there on the mothership tarmac and saying, wait, turn the light bulb on. Humans love light bulbs. You got to hand it to him. So logic pretty much threw that out the window 24 or 48 hours later. But when you start hearing law enforcement come out and say, oh no, we don't know what these are, and you have a local sheriff say, yeah, I took shots at it, I don't know who or what these are doing, and then you have one that falls out of the sky, and you've got now someone holding up a 6-bladed rotor. I think I read yesterday that one nefarious organization is supporting the major investment in another corporation. So are we being tested? Are we being prepared? Here is where I think the detriment is, John. Here's where the problem, where the rubber meets the road.
Lay it on me.
Crying wolf. If I keep showing you drones and I go, oh God, and then you see drones again and you go, oh dear me, and then you see drones again and you go, yeah, and then the fourth and fifth and sixth time you become desensitized to it, just like the kid in the one that cried wolf in the woods, and then the wolf shows up and eats him, and everyone goes, yeah. I think that's the real major problem we have, is the desensitization of people's fear against drones, because they're here. And it only takes one dropping into a stadium of people, and you have greatly reduced the number of people buying tickets to a stadium. All it takes is, the other day, there was a really great image. This bird, I think, had gone to a local factory and had eaten a good 2 or 3 pounds of metal filings and was flying around and went into a jet engine. And you could see, as soon as the bird went into the jet engine, all the metal filings burst into flames right there on the lip of the engine. And you can see how facetious I'm being. But imagine if the news were to say, no, this really was a drone that went into the engine of this plane.
Right. Then it's a whole different conversation.
It's a whole different story. It's a lot like, one person brings a shoe onto a plane, tries to light it on fire, and for the next, 15, 20 years, we're all taking off our shoes.
Right.
One terrorist organization, turns, and I shouldn't say terrorist organization. I can't at this point.
The federal government is questionable.
Yeah, some organization turns your phone and your pager into an explosive, but we're never going to stop those from coming on the plane, because you'd stop selling plane tickets. Right. It's the same. So what I'm worried about is the desensitization of the public to, well, what's a real threat? Are shoes a real threat, or exploding pagers a threat? Because we let pagers on the plane every day, but we don't let shoes without going scan. So our logic is just, we're throwing spaghetti against the wall. We're not thinking clearly. We're not slowing down, thinking this through methodically. And you say, okay, drones at night are a threat. No one flies drones at night, and especially over government buildings. But the government and the police can't just start spraying the sky with bullets. I think we
have a really weird conundrum where the introduction of drones in consumer space was primarily from a company like DJI,
right,
where it was all about, hey, check out this cool footage you can get. And some of those products are absolutely amazing. And they've tried heavily to regulate those, right? And I think they're failing miserably in general terms. I think they're failing to try and regulate it because it's advancing so quickly. And I almost wonder, like, because you could make the case that those same drones are the ones being used. It's probably cheaper drones, to be fair. That stuff like that is the stuff that's being used overseas as a carrier for payloads, and that's really, really scary. Because if anyone can go buy one of these things, and you should be able to if you're not using it for nefarious purposes, but where do you draw the line? And what do we do as a society to stay aware of these things? Because you can't see them when they're 1,000 feet up or whatever they are. Even at like 200 or 300 feet, you really can't see what's going on.
Right. But do you need to?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean,
is
you
Amazon
know better than I do.
Is Amazon hovering 300 feet over the sky and just kind of thinking, do I want to deliver a package right now, or do I just kind of want to hang out at 300 feet? Like, why are the drones at night at this point? Again, you said, where do we draw the line? I think that's a really great question, because we do not live in a society that believes in prepare. We live in a society that believes in repair. Look at the movie Jaws. We know there's a shark in the water. We know it's eating people. Again, but we're not going to let that ruin the bottom dollar of a good day at the beach. Right. And what do we all get to do? We all get to sit on the slanted beach as a stadium and watch them chew up kids inside the surf. And so we've been screaming about this, and don't take our word for it. We're a very small company. We're a $10 million company. We're not a $10 billion company. Look at the amount of money that Anduril has raised.
I don't know. I don't even know who that is.
So Palmer Luckey, who the gentleman from the head display, went on to the Oculus Rift, went on to raise Series AC. Oh, is A, B, C, D, E, F? Are they on F? F. I think they're on Series F right now. I think the last time they raised money was something like, $700 trillion. I don't know. It's some ridiculous amount of money. They've been doing this for a long time. So I don't want to say, hey, Roborounds is the only one shouting about this. There's a lot of big companies, but who is listening? Again, if you say, where do we draw the line? Well, I would say, wait until these things start flying over the White House. The Pentagon. Wait until they start flying into the jets. Where do we draw the line, John?
Yeah, I don't know.
This is I'm just describing the last week. I'm not describing the last few years. In the last week, we've seen drones flying over and harassing bases, government buildings. We've seen them terrifying the public. We've seen a Mayorkas literally have to go on and say, we need to do something about this. That should literally alarm the public to a great deal. When our leaders are going, well, we're going to do something about this. Look at Margaret Brennan on her show. What a wonderful reporter. Great show. Face the Nation. You have the incoming national security advisor saying that President Trump wants an Iron Dome, and that has to include drones. I think the quote was, we need an Iron Dome for the United States, and that needs to include drones. Everybody from the local sheriff to the president of the United States is saying we need to do something about this. This is called death by yes, John. This is when every single person skirts responsibility and authority, looks to their right, and stands in a circle. Well, pretty much.
I think the issue is they all say we need to do something about this, but that something is undefined in most people's minds. That the concept of what to do is undefined. It's a very broad-reaching thing for a lot of people, but that seems to be where you guys have come up with actual solutions to these issues. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have a no collateral damage anti-drone round that's got a 400-foot reach that's fairly accurate to 300 feet. So, I don't recommend anybody use any projectile to its maximum range. You're just asking for trouble, whether it's artillery, bullets, or pneumatic. But we have a anti-drone solution that you can fire from a pneumatic launcher that protects seaports, airports, embassies, bases, that you can fire from a fixed position like a phalanx in the corner of a building. It can be carried by an individual guard. This can be mounted below a drone. We work with all the organizations that we work with do the things we just mentioned, and all of these organizations.
All of these things are actually being implemented. What you're just describing.
Yeah, we're working with an organization that's got a system that's below its a drone that hunts down other drones and shoot these projectiles at it. We're working with an organ. We just signed a really great agreement with Hop Ammo. So we're now partnered with Hop Ammo. We've just created the very first anti-robotic bullet. Why? Because these things are a real threat. You've got you have someone that is creating an army of robots that has the right ear to the president. And that's kind of the plot to Star Wars 2, I believe. But, when you have 9 competing companies creating upright walking humanoids, and you have the wealthiest man in the history of our planet saying, I'm going to build 1 billion robots per year. He said this 3 weeks ago, I believe, 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, but he also said we would be on Mars last year. So I don't.
He
I don't
was now in the White House, and he also launched a car into space. And I would never, as much as I like or dislike Elon Musk, I'll never doubt that man. I'll never doubt that man. Everything he says he's going to do, he ends up doing, whether it succeeds or fails.
I don't doubt him. I doubt the timeline.
Well, I know that he is trying to do something that I went to a double feature and watched Terminator and Repo Man. And I'm pretty sure it does not go well when you start creating I'm pretty certain.
All right. So I think it's important for people to understand, because I know we're going to have some newer listeners since the last time you were on. You talked about pneumatic projectiles.
Yeah.
Can you explain at a very basic level what that is? Because you've given me that explanation. Can you explain that for the people that may be listening or watching?
So I brought props this time just so I could actually explain that. So here is a container of pneumatic rounds. These are jammer rounds.
These are jammer rounds, and for those that are listening, these look like paintballs.
These look like paintballs, and they are fired from the same. Here, I think this is an actual picture from one of our last podcasts where I hold up some balls and I give some strange look, and then you can pause on that, and that'll be really interesting looking. But these are .68 caliber pneumatic projectiles. Obviously, this started with the paintball, and then someone got the bright idea to make a rigid case. It's a binary case. And so machines will drop either paint or liquid or powder or whatever you want. In our factory, we load up tanglers. We load up a flexible line. You're familiar with dog tag chain. We actually received a patent on loading a flexible line into projectiles, specifically for the purpose of knocking down drones. So you can go on YouTube or our website, and you can see we spent a year at a base in Austin, Texas, flying single, double, and triple drones in 4 and 6 rotor configurations over the tree line to a fixed position as 2 soldiers knocked them out of the sky. And then we increasingly put more and more realistic mortars on the bottom of them. They're all plastic, but until the neighbors called and said that your base is being attacked, and we realized we had to kind of stop. But it was very effective. And in one instance, the projectile hits the drone, cracks open, and this flies out, hits the rotor, and either shears it off or breaks it off of the drone. But the initial kinetic impact is enough to flip it. And in one instance, this was thrown into another drone, and 1 round knocked 2 drones out of the sky.
So it's almost like for that particular one, you get a dual effect. You get the initial hit,
yes,
and then whatever that chain may do. How long is that piece of line that you're shoving into that small projectile? Can you say that?
1 foot.
And that's all you need.
Yeah, 1 foot of chain. And the idea of throwing a ball chain at something has been around since 1640, I believe the patent said. So it's, obviously throwing it out of a cannon is nothing new, or the idea of throwing a bola at something. But when you're throwing a large, long item that has a lot of centrifugal and centripetal forces working on it, it slows it down, air, wind resistance. So we thought, why not put something that, and bead chain won't tangle or knot. So you can put all this into a big barrel, reach in anywhere you want and pull out a single strand. So it won't knot together, but it will form into a very small ball, which allows us to put it into a projectile, which we can throw 300-400 feet away. Then the bola shows up.
So you've created a delivery method rather than just firing it and having it open like a shotgun or a cannon. You've created a way to get it there and then open.
Yes.
Okay.
And so on full auto, and again, law enforcement can't use full auto, but the military can. When law enforcement will feather a trigger or do as many as they can in succession, 10 rounds will throw 10 feet into a circle 10 feet wide at 300 feet. So it's very much like hunting birds. You don't hunt birds with a rifle or a pistol. You hunt birds with a shotgun. When you shoot a shotgun, it throws 200-300 pellets at a single bird. When you eat that bird, only one pellet ends up getting spit out of your mouth. So it's about hit ratio. If you want to hit an aerial target, you can look all day long at videos, John, ridiculous videos of people at machine gun festivals and at shoots with tracer rounds trying to shoot a simple paper or remote control plane. And it's up in the air for 20, 30 seconds with 50, 60, 100 people shooting rounds at it, and no one can hit it. Look at Russia. A drone is flying into the harbor, and the Russians are trying to shoot it, indiscriminately firing at every neighborhood and vessel all inside the port. And did they ever hit the drone? No, you look in the background and it blows up on the ground. If you're going to fire in an urban area, you have to launch something that when it misses your target, because you're going to miss with the other 299 pellets. One pellet's going to hit. And when it does, you need to make sure it drowns the drone. And all the ones that miss, if they hit anything else, that person's got to turn around and go, damn it, not turn around and die. So this allows you to protect embassies. So if you fire on if you miss the drone, you haven't fired on a sovereign nation with a bullet. You've instead annoyed it with a loitering piece of plastic. But this piece of plastic will drop drones out of the sky all day long. Seaports. What do you do when a drone flies between two ships? You're just going to unload on your fellow ship? No, you can't.
That's less than ideal.
Right? So the drone flies between two ships and just shoots indiscriminately and no one can fire back at it. What do you do when it flies through an airport? You're going to fire at all the neighborhoods and all the other planes in the area? What do you do when it flies into a stadium? You're just going to start firing lead at all the people who came to the state. You have to find solutions that when you miss, because we miss, humans miss.
So is this something that, somebody out there listening or watching, is this something that they could purchase from you guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a civilian legal product that is just.
This is a legal product to possess. It is much like a hollow point. What are hollow points used for?
Defense.
No, they're used for killing people, for putting a bullet into someone. Whether that's legal or not is debated in court.
I see what
hollow points are not for targets or for fruit. They're not for hunting. Hollow points, any shooter, there's probably a few who would argue, but the majority of all shooters would say, oh yeah, I know what a hollow point's used for. Well, I'm not suggesting anybody go out and shoot anybody with a hollow point, but I own hollow points. They're sold at Academy and Cabela's and Bass Pro Shops and everywhere. But that doesn't mean that all those organizations condone anyone putting a bullet into anyone else. But saying that you have the right to defend yourself is American. And every ammunition and gun manufacturer and every manufacturer of any defense, anything, whether it's a pepper spray or it's a gun or a knife, if it's in the use of defending your life and yourself and your property, that is American. And so if the news and the police and everyone else is going to say, Well, let's just wait until that drone has burned down your house or killed your child or disrupted your entertainment session or dropped a tungsten dart through the White House or the Pentagon. We'll deal with it then. No, we need to deal with this now.
Right. We need to be thinking about how to mitigate this, or I mean, at the very least, reduce the threat. Reduce the threat. So we actually have a question that I wanna address in the comments, because I think I understand it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Our friend Aaron from Armed Atlas is saying, how does the pellet know when to open? And it's not something where the pellet has any intelligence. It's a shell, and it breaks apart when
It's
it impacts.
100% analog. So one of the problems that you're going to see with everything we're doing is it's jammable. So the future of weaponry and battle, when as everything is going the direction of electronic and AI and robotics and drones, those are all defeated via jamming. And so you have to create something that isn't jammable. You have to create something that is not stoppable or trackable, can fly all the way to the target, open mechanically, and do something mechanical in order to take this down. So it can't be stopped or jammed, or there's no premeditated
You can't have
shield.
intelligence or circuitry on board.
No. And so much like anything else, you have to have the ability to train and practice and aim. You're firing at something flying in the sky. But when you start to pair it with targeting systems, with other flying drones, with trained, knowledgeable people like law enforcement and military and security officials and Secret Service who know what they're doing, it gives them a chance, a fighting chance to defend their asset, to defend a stadium, to defend the White House. Again, I'm quoting the local sheriff and I'm quoting the President of the United States. We got to do something about this. Drones or robots, it's all, in my opinion, it's all the same.
I think we are, society is much more familiar with drones, but the idea of robots, humanoid robots, as it were, is the things of sci-fi. Drones used to be the thing of sci-fi, and now we have this.
I'm just curious, what makes you say that robots are the things of sci-fi?
Well, that's where we saw them first, and primarily people's exposure to them is from science fiction. The exposure is the I, Robot movie.
Right.
When you think of a humanoid robot, most people lean that direction. And with the I can't remember the company that was doing these, like the dog and all of these other experiments on how to get these things self-balancing and walking and doing all these insane capabilities. It starts to become a reality. And one of the other things, because we spent a lot of time talking about the drones, one of the other things that you guys have more recently worked with is this deal with hot munitions for center fire projectiles that are meant to disable robots or something similar, whatever that may be.
Robots. No, we came up with the first anti-robotic bullet.
Well, I guess that's where Robo rounds comes from. So what is the anti-robot bullet? What's inside of that?
So we found a wizard who had a really cool wand.
How long was his hair and cloak?
It was only a beard. No, we realized that all of our ammunition, everything that exists, is focused on blood, tissue, and bone, unless you're dealing with a military round that either explodes or has a depleted uranium tip or a sabot dart that goes through 3 tanks. Aside from crazy, you really have everything that's focused on people. So I wanted to come up with something that was more focused on signals, sensors, electronics, and circuitry instead of blood, tissue, and bone. You need to look no further than life imitating art, imitating life. And Reese describes it well to Sarah Connor in The Terminator. You can't stop these things. They don't experience shock or hemorrhaging. They're not going to bleed out. They're not going to. You can cut them in half. They're going to keep coming. Look at the end of The Terminator. It's all about this thing. No matter what, it doesn't feel remorse. It isn't going to suddenly stop and go, wow, I've been cut in half. Do I want to kill Sarah Connor?
Sure.
It just keeps going. So everyone building military robots is going to build them just like we did with the Tom Selleck movie, just like we did in Terminator, because we imitate art, imitating life. The writers of these movies call up book authors who had called up military advisors to get this information. So it all goes full circle. So we tried to make something that would affect electronics, mechatronics, signals, subsystems. So we make a round that is a ferritic material that magnetizes on impact. So before it impacts, it is not magnetic. Upon impact, it becomes magnetic. Now,
so let me see if I can guess how that functions. So when this material is agitated, there is some kind of charge being generated, and that's how you get it to magnetize, or is it heat?
no, actually, it's impact force. So have you ever had a screwdriver or a hammer that you purchased that wasn't magnetic that suddenly holds a nail?
Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There you go. You didn't do anything to that hammer except hit it on things. So the idea came to us that we could have something that was not magnetic that becomes magnetic with very powerful impact forces. And we found that there are multiple materials that one we don't use, but a good example is alnico. So aluminum, nickel, and cobalt mixed together creates a material that can become then ferritic. But we use something that's different because that's used in a different purpose and for a different reason. It didn't suit what we're doing. But the idea being, upon impact force, this becomes magnetic and fouls.
So this is like a powder?
Yeah, everything we do is
it sort of like magnetite fineness, like sand almost, or is it more fine than that?
No, we try and go as fine as possible so that everything upon impact, upon frangible, as it is frangible. I don't know what the verb is for when something is
frangibility.
I don't know. What's the actual? Do you frange when you're in the process of being frangibility? I don't know. But when it comes apart, we wanted to make sure that it dispersed a metal powder, either a conductive, a magnetic, a electronically disruptive material into the cavity of the robot. So we have a material that the magnetic material, which adheres to metal systems, fouls gears, fouls pneumatic actuators, literally acts as a fouling agent versus blowing straight through the robot, which doesn't really help anything. You got to put something in it.
Okay, so you've developed this as a center fire thing. And this is something that is currently available?
Yeah, that's going to be introduced at SHOT Show this coming year. Hop is going to be introducing it. We have 3 different anti-robotic rounds. One is a magnetic, one is a whiskering round, and one is a jamming round.
So the whiskering one, I think we talked about that the first episode, maybe. Yeah. I can't remember, but that is a fascinating concept. Can you explain that one again?
Yeah. Science. We apply science to the projectile technology. Whiskering under impact forces, tin and zinc. A few other 3 or 4 other materials will do this, but upon impact forces, it will create little hairs that grow between circuits and exposed wires and little CPU solder points, and this will cause cross contamination. So electricity goes where it's not wanted. Errant transmissions go where they weren't supposed to. In effect, we're trying to give the robot Parkinson's or MS, something where the nervous system is under attack. And then lastly is the jamming material. That is specifically, we find in the pneumatic version, it was incredibly good at blocking LiDAR, infrared, and CCTV. But we added two more materials to it, and we found that when introduced inside the internal cavity of a robot, it greatly interferes with the transmission of signals and sensors. So giving it instructions, outward navigation, all of those systems become compromised. So
what's the delivery method for the center fire? Because we have these plastic capsules that look like paintballs, basically like a harder paintball for the pneumatic version. What is the version for the center fire?
I didn't think of bringing one of those in here, but you can see a picture of it on the website, and Hop just put out a really great article about the introduction and the collaboration. But we take a very large cavitied hollow point, we fill with material and then cap it off to deliver a specific amount of material as much as we can. We're starting.
So this is a lead core projectile with a brass or a copper jacket. Is that what we're doing?
You have, I don't want to get too much into the specifics of it, but we're trying to expand the ability of carrying more and more of this material.
Sure.
Ultimately, the whole bullet will be made of the material, but finding a mixture that will center is difficult. Loading a copper jacket with a powder material doesn't exist, so we have to find a way to press it into a core. But our patents don't cover the specific recipe. It covers the dispersion of a powder for electric disruption. So we'll continue to make revised different ways, including one we're working on this next year. We're working on a non-nuclear micro EMP round. This will create a EMP.
This is just freaking wild,
right? It will create a electromagnetic pulse in a cloverleaf, a sinusoidal pattern in front of the upon impact into the target, about the size of a very large beach ball. So this would be irrelevant to really anything else except a robot. So
this is done mechanically. We're doing this
mechanically, yeah.
How the wait, how the hell do you accomplish that? I look forward to seeing that, because
yeah. There's no battery pack.
Well, what immediately comes to my mind when you say like this large beach ball size EMP, that means you hit one and you can affect others. So if there is sort of this like cloud of flying combatants, whatever that may be, you then have the opportunity to affect the things around it, which is very interesting, because that means your hit ratio goes up.
Yeah,
your payload is hitting a wider area. That's fascinating.
And what you're throwing is not debris or fragmentation or shrapnel. You know, in wartime right now, knocking drones out of the sky, I don't mean to say it flippantly like it's easy, because I unfortunately have seen so many terrible videos of the way people are dying at the hands of drones in the war, and it's absolutely terrible. But what you're seeing is people doing everything they can, throwing as much as they can into the air, explosive, lead, airburst, and it really where this all lands is irrelevant. I thought it was terrible when I saw the ratio of the number of civilians to military deaths in the Gazan war, until my military partner said, you realize that's the same ratios that we experience when we go to war. We're no different. And you start to realize, or you forget, I've been out of the military for 30 years. So you start to forget that, in war, it's war, and there are terrible things flying everywhere. But when you bring that back to a city, when you bring that back to a populated area that is not experiencing war, you can't use any of those munitions. And so you have to use something that, with the drones and pneumatic and no collateral damage, you have to have something that you can fire over the White House and the Pentagon, that you can fire in the middle of DC and not wake up the next day and read the news that 3 errant bullets struck a family, a politician, and a minister. Sure. And then with the robots, I'll say this, I have been saying for multiple years now, John, I'm not worried about humanoid robots walking down the street with weapons. And I think that if people fear that others are fearing that, they'll dismiss it, I think the real fear is when you have someone who swats your PlayStation and calls the police, and this happens to politicians and civilians alike. Someone utilizes the access to your network. And if you'll recall, Apple has access to your phone. They listen. Elon Musk has access to all of his robotics. He listens. They openly say they do this. It's for the betterment of you and their product to seamlessly work together. And I think that's great. But what it tells me is that there's a back door that some teenager out there can reach into my robot, my Roomba maybe, and have it roll around my house yelling expletives at me, like that happened last month or the month before. So anybody that thinks, anybody out there, any of your listeners, anybody out there that thinks that your robot or robots are not going to be able to be tapped into by some 15-year-old who is going to remove the parameters of how fast it can lift your mom, or how fast it can feed your face, or how fast it can pet the back of your head. And if it goes from 0.001 joule of force to 100 joules of force, well, that karate chop is the last thing you'll ever feel. And that 15-year-old will go do some, short time because he swatted a robot and whatever. But don't tell me it's not possible, and don't tell me people aren't planning to do it right now.
Well, I saw a video, and I can't remember what school these kids were from, but they were I think it was two college age guys, and I shared it on the TGC Instagram. They were using the new Meta glasses,
Mm-hmm.
and they were streaming it from the glasses to a computer and using AI to recognize people. And within a matter of seconds, it seemed, obviously it's edited down, so I'm not sure exactly how fast this is happening, but they were basically doxing people in person while looking at them. So the glasses would recognize the people. The AI on the back end of their stuff would then find them, Google them, find out all this information, and they would be able to then walk up to that person and immediately engage. This type of technology is accelerating at a rate we cannot control.
Yeah. Yeah.
And while there are many, many, many good uses for it, there are also lots of ways to use this in a completely fucked up way.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a really, for lack of a better phrase, there are a lot of people
that is the best
looking to do a lot of fucked up stuff. And,
right.
You ask anybody that's ever been stuck out at sea who reached into the glove box of their boat and pulled out a flare gun and did it save your life? It's like, well, that's how they saved me, man. That flare gun, that stupid orange, big, dumb looking gun. And I can't tell you how many people I've heard as a former, boat driver in the Navy and recreational boat driver and friends who own them. There's one in every glove box, and the ones who don't feel it's required still have it in the glove box, because you have to be able to protect yourself. This is no different than carrying mace in your purse. It's the same reason
we all carry a gun, because in case something happens, I want to be
prepared. That's right, and that's the point. And look what happens when you don't. You have all of our. It is a very terrifying thing, John, when you see and hear the biggest and brightest of our law enforcement scratching their heads, looking in the sky and going, what are those? Why are those here? And the more our military keeps releasing footage and information about the fact that there are, UAPs and I guess we don't use the word UFO anymore, but it's like there's these things flying around and we're like, I don't know what they are, whether there are adversaries or whether it's whatever it is. It never leaves you feeling secure at night if you don't know what's flying overhead or who's in control of it. Look at how we freaked out over the balloon flying over, the Chinese balloon. But now it's in your airspace. It's not, tens of thousands of feet in the sky. It's flying right over your government buildings and bases. And, again, wasn't this the plot of the first Independence Day with Will Smith? Is everybody wakes up with all these things flying over the government buildings? I'm just saying, like, we're going to get desensitized to this, and then suddenly someone's going to do something terrible.
It's fascinating because this is one of the very few times, I should say, where something that is straight up war related comes to American soil, when people are looking up in the sky and going, I don't know what that is or why it's there.
Yeah.
And that's pretty scary. I do have a question about the robotic centerfire rounds, because this has just been nagging me. So we have what is essentially a soft material. What happens when these things are encased in steel or really thick aluminum? What can you do then? Are you guys working on a harder, like a tungsten projectile to get through, or how does that work?
No, quite the opposite. So what we're trying to do is a CQB round, hit hard, don't go through the target. Later we'll worry about 223 and long distance. But for now, the idea is handgun rounds, not 45, 12 gauge, 9 millimeter. The goal, our current ammunition has a front loaded cavity filled with this powder. Upon impact, these rounds very quickly dissipate and collapse and fall apart. We use either the bullet itself does pretty much what it would normally do, but when you fill that cavity with a powder, it very much and compact it, it stops that standard individual bullet from kind of just folding backwards and penetrating straight through. We want to stay inside. We want to do as much damage as we can.
But what I'm saying is, how do you get inside if the sort of outer shell of this thing is a harder material than the projectile? How do you get there?
It isn't. So robots aren't heavily armored. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like,
yeah, I mean,
so if I was making something like this and I knew that your product existed, I'd just cover it in steel, and then it wouldn't be an issue. Right?
We should apply that to everything. What would keep us safer? Steel cars.
Sure.
We don't do that. We go the exact opposite way. People don't. No one wants to eat their broccoli, and a lot of people don't use logic when they make stuff. So yes, I would absolutely agree. I would absolutely agree. But I'll say this: the people that are making robots, they armored the CPU and the battery. Not always everything, but their battery is armored. So our goal is not to penetrate the battery. Our goal is to target the other 90% of this massive target. And we also get asked, well, how much is enough? Well, how many bullets is enough to kill somebody? I mean, how many times can someone be shot in the head and live? How many times can someone be shot in the foot and die? All of these happen all the time. You have to do as much as you can, as fast as you can, because robots are very fast, strong. They're everything more except intelligent than we are. And that means that you have an adversary in front of you that is going to be doing something that you don't want very quick. You have got to do as much as you can. You have to put as many of these rounds. If you have a magazine full of them, empty the whole magazine into them. That's what I would do. Because if they find you and you've been killed by this thing accidentally because it went wrong, or it was spinning in circles and hit you, or someone randomly made it hit you, or whatever, and they find you on the ground and you got one round off thinking, nah, that was enough. That just doesn't happen. So much?
I mean, the same thing is very, very true when it comes to humans.
Right.
You shoot until the threat is stopped.
Right. He was shot 18 times, but you had a revolver, sir. Well, you know what? No,
calm down, Jerry Mitchellek.
No, I think the goal is to do something more than just a standard bullet hitting a target that is designed to not be affected by your bullet. So every round must have a secondary measure, a secondary attack. We're working on other rounds that are for harassing robots. So we've got a material that this is a difficult one, but it's a amalgamous gallium that will slowly degrade and erode the inner framework of the robot. So a lot of military robots will drop off ammunition and run back, or harass and attack quickly and go back for more ammunition, etc. By the time the next morning, these would be never usable again. So once you corrode aluminum framing and structure with an etchant and a gallium, it will turn into goo.
That was my next question: is how do you get to the bare aluminum? Because I know that when it comes to gallium, if it has like an aluminum oxide, you have to penetrate that layer.
Right.
Is the same true for anodized aluminum? Because anodizing is.
I know that every time we have we just started messing with that round because frankly, the EMP round is a lot sexier. We're also working on a piezoelectric round for smaller calibers to do something similar with an electronic bullet, but not EMP. I can't get into it yet.
Sure.
But the yeah, every time we have found the gallium is effective, it has to include an etchant in with it, or else it will not penetrate through the aluminum. Aluminum, how that has even a Coke can, you got to scratch and rough it up before that simple experiment will work. But yeah, I think the goal, the idea is electronic disruption, stop robots, stop drones, get there first. And law enforcement is incredibly interested in what we're doing. We're talking with the correctional industry, law enforcement industry. We've been speaking with the CEOs of the top pneumatic, centerfire, and ranged organizations. Everybody feels that the coming threat for the next century is an electronic problem, electronic target. And
Right.
so our goal is really to get our technology out there, partner with as many people as we can, get our payloads into as many of their projectiles. We're a laboratory, and we got a lot more work to do. There's a lot more problems coming.
Well, we don't even. It's the classic. You don't know what you don't know. Where we don't know what those threats may be in the future, and the fact that you're thinking of yourself in the laboratory sense means that you are giving yourself the opportunity to learn, as opposed to saying this is what we make, this is only what we make, and that's that. You're saying we want to learn and we want to continuously improve, and the scientific method allows for such things.
Improve through failure.
Right.
You have to
Right.
have that laboratory to continually test and fail and fail and fail and fail. You learn nothing through success. You learn everything through failure. If you ask someone who wins at something the next time to do it again, they'll tell you, I don't know how, I just won. You ask someone who failed, they'll go, well, I know what I'm not going to do, this, or this. You keep failing at it and you keep learning and honing that point. You get to a point to where it works and it makes a difference. And now we've figured out what works. Now we just got to get into the hands of law enforcement. And that's partly why we're talking to you. You've got a great audience and a great show. And, robots and drones are a big threat, a growing threat. And as you can see from the news, a lot of law enforcement and politicians and citizens want something done now.
Yeah, I'm one of them. I don't know what the solution is. I struggle with the idea of people just slinging lead into the sky, like
Right?
out of a gun.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah, like that's
I
never
think,
a bad time, or sorry, that's never a good time, and it leads to a lot of accidental, as you called it, collateral damage.
yeah,
So
yeah.
when we're talking about this from somebody out there listening to this, right? Like typically it's going to be a consumer level person. We do have a lot of the gun industry listeners. We do have people in politics that are listening. So for the normal consumer, is this something that you're saying, hey, go buy this? This is your opportunity. Like,
No,
are we recommending
I'm
that they go buy the chain rounds?
as a business person selling a product, I would say, yes, please buy my
Sure.
please buy my product. I mean, if you're asking me what you should do with my product, I mean, I sometimes have used my pasta ladle to scratch my back. I wash it then, but no one's going to tell me what I'm going to do with my product. But I would say to any of your listeners listening, if you're absolutely terrified and you're incredibly worried about what is going on, and it scares you even more that your politicians and your law enforcement officers are scratching their heads as well and saying, we need to do something. Isn't anybody going to do something? We should do something. Well, until they do, you may need to protect yourself, or at least be prepared to.
I think that is the most political answer you could have given, because I know you're in a difficult spot. You don't want
Yeah.
people breaking whatever local laws there may or may not be. We don't know what these laws are because, frankly, this has never been a problem before. So there's likely not laws about it, but there will be when this goes sideways, because it
Well,
inevitably will.
think about, again, think about how unusual this situation is. Again, I keep repeating a few of these, but I think it's important for your listeners, for the two of us to kind of really ponder this. You have sheriffs, law enforcement officers, you have the military, you have President Trump, you have the head of DHS, you have the incoming national security advisor. You have all of these people saying the same thing. This is alarming. We should do something about this. I'm concerned that we haven't been. How many years now have we been worried about this? And even more so, who are all of these people talking to? Who is the president asking? Who is the head of who is Mayorkas asking? Who are all these people asking? Is there, if this is not the diffusion of responsibility, where you have a room of people and everybody's in on it except one person, and smoke starts coming onto the door, and that person starts looking around going, are we going to do something? And everyone else in the room just goes back to doing their job. That one individual eventually just sits in silence as the smoke
It's a
is pouring
circular
in.
problem. It's circular. Everybody
It's
is
circular.
passing the buck.
But the people that are sitting in the circle, that's what alarms me. It's the people in the circle. It's the president, the head of DHS, the national security advisor. They're all saying the same thing. We should do. Well, who is we? You're the people you're the president. You're the law enforcement. Your Department of Homeland Security. Is the FAA that powerful that the FAA can tell the president and the military and the police, tut tut, run along now? Because that's who they're all implying. All those individuals are implying that the FAA holds so much power and sway over the protection of American people that the president of the United States, the head of DHS, the head of the National Security Administration, they all have to ask permission and suggest we do something. Man, I mean, that's
asinine.
crazy. That's crazy.
It's a bit asinine. I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. I know that there are a lot of people that are going to be looking to folks like yourself for answers. And I'm thankful that you have some answers. And I don't think any of us are pretending like we know exactly how to deal with every threat, because that would be ludicrous.
Right.
But to have a solution that could work is far better than no solution.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And there are existing solutions, but there's reasons that they're not particularly in use. There's some great airburst solutions, but that creates a lot of fragmentation. There is a shotgun net round, but to quote law enforcement, you have a lethal weapon firing 4 large pieces of bismuth, tungsten, heavy metal at a target that's not going to that's typically stationary, and it's got a shotgun's distance worth of reach. So it's going to have to be so close that if it was flying at you, even if your net caught it, it would land on you.
Sure.
And so everybody out there's kind of scratching their head. And my suggestion is, you want an answer? We have it. There's no harm in testing it out. If you want to go to a base or a range and fly a drone and see for yourself, go to town. Multiple 3-letter agencies and military organizations have asked the same, law enforcement. And all I can say is this is going to be a really interesting year and decade and century. Electronic warfare, UAV, drones, we're headed in the worst direction ever, It's
going to get fucking weird. It's going to get weird. I'll tell you what, I'm glad that we here at TGC have guys like yourself to lean on for this expertise. I think this is really interesting as a topic. And, I think if something else continues to develop, we're going to have you back and continue this conversation, because I think this is one of the more important things that people need to be thinking about. Barton, is there anything that people out there need to know? The website is roborounds.com. What else besides that?
That's it. We are, our organization licenses our materials and payloads. And until we find individuals who can license and distribute our payloads, we sell them ourselves. We work with partners here in the United States. We're 100% very compliant, and we're ITAR regulated, and I'm supposed to say ITAR compliant. That's always a strange one to say, but we're set to go. And if we can help, if we can be part of the solution, that's the whole goal. protect humanity, stay alive, defend your position, and promote safety.
I appreciate you, brother. I think this is an important conversation, and I appreciate you jumping on here with us. Anybody out there listening, watching, be sure to check them out. Also, check out our sponsors, XS Sights. They're some of the best iron sights for pistols out there. They also have stuff for rifles, shotguns, you name it, they've got you covered. If you use the code TGC at xssights.com, you can get yourself a discount. I think it's like 15-20%, something like that. Goes up from time to time. Also, check out Camorado, CAMORADO.com. Get yourself some of this very nice Sea Smoke camo. That's our signature. They also have a ton of other colors and patterns and all that sort of stuff. Definitely check out Camorado. And if you want to support this show, use the code TGC. Save yourself some cash. I would really appreciate it. Barton, thank you again for being here, brother.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you guys soon. Thanks for listening and watching.
Take care.